and we would like to ask you to see any of the Marxism team that if you're interested in joining the Socialist Workers' Party. Some of us forgot our stickers, but most of us have stickers on, and we could tell you a little bit more about Socialist Worker, and obviously we are taking this opportunity to try and strengthen our numbers and get more people involved in striving to combat social injustice and get a better world for everyone. But I'm going to let Sinead back in then, okay?
Yeah, well, just going to come back on a couple of things, and I suppose, I suppose the question that everybody, I suppose, kind of asked in different forms is this idea about, well, how do we kind of get our message out, and how do we kind of get that kind of alternative viewpoint out there? And I mean, I think just to talk about Chomsky for a couple of minutes, I think one of the big limitations of this work, of Herman and Chomsky's work, is that it doesn't really, I think, provide a strategy for that. I don't think it's saying that the media is all-powerful and all-encompassing, but I think its failure to perhaps to accommodate within the theory a space for dissent, and to look at concrete examples, of which there are many, in which media workers themselves have kind of have organised. You know, in August 1985, there was a journalist who walked out on strike against the censorship of the Real Life documentary on Northern Ireland. There was the printers in the Sun refused to print that front page that had Arthur Scargill, the leaders of the miners' union, giving a Nazi salute. You know, there was. You know, there are lots of examples in terms of the media trying to uphold professional standards, journalists themselves refusing to sort of to go against the lines that are kind of parroted by, particularly in the war on terror and things like that. So there are examples of that. But I think the problem is that whether or not, and I mean, Therese there has identified some of the problems within capitalism itself, there are not many solutions. I mean, obviously, media control, the kind of regulation of who owns what media ownership, and that has clearly not worked. The Broadcasting Authority does not see any problem with the fact that Dennis O'Brien controls a huge proportion, close to a quarter of the Irish media. That is not considered to be in any terms problematic. Self-regulation hasn't really worked either, and this is being discussed in Britain at the moment. And one of the proposals being put forward by the Tories is the idea that you have regulation which would involve journalists applying, and media organisations applying for licences from the government. And you could just see all the sort of possibilities for corruption that could be involved there, about who gets licences and who doesn't, who gets to report, all of that. I think the point about John Pilger is, I mean, interestingly, John Pilger is a big supporter of Media Lens and what they do, and Media Lens actually does very, very valuable work in holding the media accountable in terms of what it does. And what's interesting about Media Lens is it doesn't just focus on the right-wing press, it actually often focuses on the liberal press and kind of challenges them. The argument, I suppose, what taking kind of from manufacturing consent, what they argue is that people like Pilger and other crusading journalists, by becoming part of that media establishment, they kind of encourage the lie that the media can accommodate all different perspectives, and that they sort of give a legitimacy to that sort of idea that there are, you may have John, for every John Pilger, you have some other kind of right-wing journalist, and it's the idea that there's balance in there somewhere if you get all of these viewpoints. So I think that's where they're coming from. But I agree with you. I mean, I think the work that lots of there are lots of kind of important journalists out there who tell the truth in the face of enormous obstacles, and I think that is quite important. But in terms of in terms of trying to fight for an alternative media, I'm not sure given what I think Chomsky outlined, that propaganda model, given within the framework of capitalism that you can have within the kind of mainstream media. I think what we do have to do is begin to look outside the media, or outside, should I say, the mainstream media. And I think the internet is a very good, a very, very useful tool for that, and that we begin, that these days you can watch, Al Jazeera online. They're all, you can follow, as people have given examples, you can follow what's happening in Occupy Wall Street. the only sometimes problem about just saying, well, it's all out there in the media, on the internet, is that, well, there's an awful lot of stuff out there in the internet, and there's a lot of crazy stuff out there as well. And it can sometimes be hard to find out what's good. So things like Facebook and things like that, I think, can be quite interesting in that they can point you to things that, I know using it, Facebook, a lot of what I use it for is links to articles online, journalistic articles that, that kind of tell you about what's happening. So I think it can be quite useful for that. But I think that one of the things, I think that where you've seen struggles against